He's too sedate. His reading last night.
But Eleanor has not your feelings. His reserve suits her.
Can he love her? Can the soul really be satisfied with such polite affections? To love is to burn, to be on fire. Like Juliet or Guinevere or Eloise.
They made rather pathetic ends, dear.
Pathetic? To die for love? How can you say so? What could be more glorious?
Kate Winslet, I think, has done an astonishing job at just maintaining a career at a really high level, at going through the different phases and finding great parts within those phases.
I saw you sitting over here by yourself. And I thought, thank God, someone normal who doesn't know how to interact with these things either.
She is, in many respects, an actor's actor. Actors want to work with her because they want to see how she does what she does.
I love that you don't care how much money a person makes. You care what they make. But what you make isn't supposed to be the best part of you. When you're a father, that's what's supposed to be the best part of you. And it's caused me 2 decades of agony, Steve, that it is for you. The worst.
She's just got so much humanity and she conveys so much feeling that it's really hard for other actors to take the scene. But she's generous enough never to never to push them aside, which is how so early on in her career she can go head to head with really phenomenal actors with a great track record and great reputation and give as good as she gets.
I need you to come back tonight and tell me every bit of it. Please.
Kate Winslet was born October the 5th, 1975 in Reading, Berkshire. She was born into largely a theatrical family. Her mother had been an actress and her father, Roger, was an actor. In fact, her maternal grandparents ran Reading Repertory Company. So it was kind of in the blood.
For a while, the family were extremely poor, really. They had free school meals, they had to receive benefits from an actors' charity. And so the early part of her life was quite tough. She went to the local primary school and then to the Red Roof Theatre School in Maidenhead, where she was mocked for her weight a little, which she found, I think, quite challenging. She talks about it quite a lot in interviews, talks about how she set out to prove those girls wrong, really, because just at the time that they really started to mock her was the time that she was starting to get parts outside the school plays that she'd been in ever since she was at primary school. She was appearing in commercials, appearing in local productions, and starting to get interest from agents about her appearing in TV productions, in kids' TV.
She was doing adverts at the age of 11. She was starting to do theatre. She sort of went to do theatre in Reading, very much at a young kind of learning stage. She would go and do productions as part of the big cast. It wasn't like leading roles. But it's fair to say she was a child actor. She had child performances behind her. But she had to complete her schooling, she had to take part-time jobs. It wasn't like this was laid out before her. She wasn't, the family legacy didn't give her a free pass into the industry. In fact, she was working in a sandwich shop, or a delicatessen, if you want to be rather sort of upmarket about it, when she heard she was going to get her first big break.
But we're all going to heaven. I'm not. I'm going to the fourth world. It's sort of like heaven. Only better, because there aren't any Christians. It's an absolute paradise of music, art, and pure enjoyment.
Heavenly Creatures is a film directed by Peter Jackson and written by him and his partner, Fran Walsh. And it tells a very particular New Zealand story, a true story, of 2 girls who become obsessed with one another, who become this kind of intimate friendship that takes on very exaggerated emotions. They are slightly out of control. They obsess about actors. They create a kind of fantasy world for themselves. And it comes to the point where it's felt by the parents that this is dangerous. This has gone too far. And there are threats to pull them apart, to separate them.
Only the best people fight against all obstacles in pursuit of happiness.
The result is an amazing performance from a very, very young actress. She not only manages to convey the idea of a real girl, a real sort of relatively high-class girl who befriends a lower-class girl, and they become best buddies. But they also have this fantasy life. They live this life. It's a sort of fantasy life to escape from the reality, the humdrum reality of their lives. This fantasy life in the film is projected into a kind of fantasy Neverland.
As the film goes on, Kate Winslet's character Juliet starts to become more and more frantic and brittle. It's very, very infinitesimal leaps that she takes, just move very slowly. Her voice stays the same, but it gets almost brighter and sharper as she delivers her lines. And towards the end, towards the chaos of the murder that the two pull off, she's really at the edge of her nerves. It's a phenomenally subtle move from this very stylish woman who enters and wows the room to someone who is so at the end of her wits that she commits a murder and then falls apart as a result of it. And every step of the way is utterly believable. She has to draw Pauline in with her. So she's very much the centre of the film, and it's her energy that carries the whole project.
Have you not received my letters?
Yes, I had the pleasure of receiving the information you were so good as to send me.
For heaven's sake, Willoughby. Tell me what is wrong.
Sense and Sensibility is Ang Lee's adaptation of the Jane Austen novel, with the screenplay written by Emma Thompson, who also stars in it as Eleanor. It is a story of the Dashwood sisters, and as the title suggests, they are very different. One is sense, one is practicality, one is sorting the life out, that is Emma Thompson's character, and one is sensibility. She is passion and romance and desire.
Kate Winslet plays Marianne, Emma Thompson's sister. She was called to audition for the character of Lucy, a much smaller part, but she pretended that she'd thought she'd prepared for Marianne. So, and Ang Lee allowed her to audition for Marianne, and she won the part. This is her second film. It's a huge film. He's a very determined director. And he, on her first day, she went to him and said, "Well, how did I do?" And he said, "You'll get better." And this was a sort of slightly crushing blow for her. But they developed this relationship. He could see that she was very nervous, very on edge, because she was surrounded by Hugh Grant, Alan Rickman, this incredible acting talent, and she was very, very much feeling out of her depth. And he started doing Tai Chi with her in the Shepperton back lot afterwards, just to calm her and centre her and focus her. And gradually the whole cast came along until eventually he was almost leading these classes. But it started off with her, and he wanted to focus and centre her because she was very, very alarmed by what she was doing.
Always prudence and honour and duty. Eleanor, where is your heart?
It was a demanding role for a young actress, and she carried it off with aplomb. So much so that she was nominated as Best Supporting Actress in the Academy Awards.
At last, a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head thus waving up and down. He raised a sigh, so piteous and profound, that it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being.
Kenneth Branagh had already seen Kate Winslet audition by the time he was casting Hamlet. He'd seen her when he was shooting Frankenstein, but he hadn't cast her. So he just knew she was right for Ophelia. He went out and called her in. And into this part, it's this famous part, but at the same time very restricting part for an actor, she manages to put an enormous amount of storytelling. I mean, there were a few extra lines thrown in, and there are some extra scenes thrown in. Kenneth Branagh tries to draw out the relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia to give it a bit of a twist, but really the twist comes from Kate Winslet's performance.
He clearly saw in Winslet something that would enhance his movie, and indeed she does in the role of Ophelia, which gave her the opportunity not just to work with some fantastic people, Branagh himself, of course, but also to show what she could do in a Shakespearean role.
My honoured lord, you know right well you did. And with them, words of so sweet breath composed has made the things more rich, their perfume lost. Take these again. For to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord.
I suppose from the point of view of Winslet's career, it was a real mark of the esteem that she was now held in. She was going to be in this big production, this kind of monument to the great play, and she was Ophelia. And that is a real kind of tick on her career. That's a real kind of badge of honour I think she could take forward. But it also just was another one of those literary roles, another part that just sort of put her in a bracket still, that she was going to be doing literary adaptations, she was going to be this English Rose. And you just feel that she needed to break that pattern.
Oh, woe is me to have seen what I have seen. See what I see.
The last thing I need is another picture of me looking like a porcelain doll. As a paying customer, I expect to get what I want.
Winslet's next film would catapult her from homegrown art house into the stratosphere. It was James Cameron's Titanic, and she won the part of Rose DeWitt Bukater, the high society girl who falls in love with a third-class passenger, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, on the fatal voyage of the Titanic. It's an extraordinary leap from Sense and Sensibility to this film, and it demanded an enormous amount, not just of personality, character and acting, but also physically incredibly demanding.
By the time Kate Winslet appears, we've had this huge spectacle created for us, very slowly, but enormous sense of scale. So we start with the sunken ship, and then we go to the CGI version of the ship, this, the crowds, everything's immense. And then we see her face. Now, at that point, she's got to have something that when we see her face, it's more compelling than all of the graphics and the visuals and the crowds and the drowned ship that we've seen. We've got to suddenly stop worrying about the iceberg and start to care about her and her story. And she just has a certain style to her. The camera almost draws up her as if it's kind of following her, not quite lasciviously, but it's adoring her. And her face is perfect. It almost reminds you of one of those sort of Mary Poppins entrances where she just arrives and everybody looks at her. It's a perfect moment.
When this ship docks, I'm getting off with you.
This is crazy.
I know. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I trusted.
She knew the character and she knew the kind of the strength of the material, but I don't think she'd quite understood what it was going to ask of her physically to do that film. And it was an extraordinary undertaking for both of the actors, but especially Winslet. They spent 70% of their time in the water. It was really tough. Cameron is a demanding director and not the most sympathetic of directors. I mean, he would like the work, he would push them to explore the characters. He did all that, but he didn't like grouching on set. And she was brave. She got into the water. I mean, it was Leo DiCaprio who was the one who was a bit reluctant. She was always there and she stood up to it. But I know, I remember interviewing her at the time, and she just said, "I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. It's pushing me to a level I don't know if I can survive it." And I think she was still just processing what she was going through. But she did it, and she survived it, and she's excellent in it. And I think all that terror and all that strength she had to find is in the character, and is in the power of the character. And if you watch that film again, you concentrate on the characters rather than the spectacle, it's a marvellous performance, because it totally convinces you of this romance. It totally gets you emotionally into the place where you're going to be destroyed if they go down with the boat. It's absolutely devastating. Yeah, it's a heightened film. It's a silly film in some respects. Everyone talks about the death scene at the end, and she's on the wood and Jack has to sink away. But that's what the film had earned. It had earned these emotions. And you can see straight away why it was such a huge hit, because it just communicated to people. It gave them what they wanted.
How are you?
How am I?
Yeah, all right. How's she?
She's Claire.
Well, will you tell her?
If I see her. She hasn't been sleeping at home the last 2 nights. Sorry.
Enigma is a thriller set around the breaking of the Enigma code. And it's got Dougray Scott as a genius codebreaker who's working at Bletchley Park and has been in love with Saffron Burrows, who disappears. And her flatmate, played by Kate Winslet, starts to be his best chum, helping him come to terms with his breakdown, and gradually the two of them fall in love.
It's a real demonstration of what Winslet likes to bring to films, and a real kind of old Hollywood quality of playing frumpier or more ordinary, but never quite letting go of the glamour. So you look at her in the film and you can see she's not the glamorous character compared to Saffron Burrows' character, because this is the idea. He's infatuated with one and rather disregarding of the other. But we, the audience, can see how beautiful she is. She's got the glasses, and she's that Kate Winslet way. She looks a bit sort of ruffled, but she's such a good actress at sort of allowing something to work within the performance. And as the film goes on, and as Dougray Scott's character starts to fall for her, she starts to seem more beautiful to us, the audience. It's an old Hollywood trick. It's a very good trick to play, because that's what we want from movies like this, is we want to feel the stars within them.
He's a professor of ancient history.
They have a malign influence on you, I think. They all have, all your friends.
He's a teacher, a master of thought.
Oh, you talk, do you? You master thoughts together.
We make love, yes, but that's not the important thing. Then he goes home to his wife in London. Does it frighten you?
Winslet plays yet another real person in Iris. She plays the young Iris Murdoch, married to John Bailey, who was the great authoress, who unfortunately developed in her later years terrible dementia and died far too early. It is the story of a relationship, basically, between two fairly challenging personalities, both of them writers. Bailey himself, rather sort of cross and sort of arrogant, and Iris clearly can give as good as she gets, but at the same time is a slightly softer, different personality.
You know more about me than anyone on earth. You are my world.
What's really interesting is the one thing Winslet didn't do was talk to Judi Dench. She said, I didn't want them to compare notes, didn't want them to sort of work out a kind of reflection of one another. She said it had to feel like two different performances within the film. So it was a deliberate choice made that they wouldn't collaborate. I think they spoke to one another, but obviously they were in different parts of the filming, so they wouldn't have seen one another very often. But what was important to Winslet was he had to separate them, because in the nature of the story, they are almost two different people.
It's a moving performance by the two actors. And Kate Winslet's role is quite the opposite. She has to be the young Iris Murdoch. She has to be this spirited girl who can't be caught, who has lovers, male and female lovers, and is quite callous and quite detached from her suitor, her boyfriend, the man who loves her. And he keeps trying to track her, catch up with her, hold her down, make her his. And she's slightly cruel to him in a weird way, not in a specifically cruel way. She never says anything nasty, but the fact that she refuses to acknowledge his devotion. And what this does is there's a fantastic moment where Jim Broadbent says, now I finally have you all to myself, and I loathe you. And it gives this whole... The Kate Winslet performance gives a very different perspective to that line, because you realise in a way that their relationship has been around him trying to catch this elusive creature. And now as finally her mind closes down and she relies on him, he doesn't want her, briefly. Then the film moves on. But that moment, I think, is the moment of the film, and it's, I suppose, the point of the film. And it really relies on Winslet delivering this quite cruel version of the, lovely, affectionate Judi Dench that we see. And it's nicely done.
I want to know you.
Hmm?
I don't constantly talk. Jesus. People have to share things, Joel.
Mm-hmm.
That's what intimacy is.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is directed by Michel Gondry from a Charlie Kaufman script. And it is, in the way that Charlie Kaufman scripts can be, structured in a very bewildering style, which really lends itself to the story that it's telling. So the film is about Jim Carrey falling in love with Kate Winslet, who is in a way, a manic pixie dream girl. She's, eccentric, she's determined, she's the girl who's going to take over his life and blow him away. And we see this romance develop at the beginning of the film. And it seems quite, almost indie love by numbers in a way. But we gradually realise that what we're watching is his memories of their love affair as they're erased by this company, Lacuna, because their relationship has fallen apart and she no longer recognises him.
It's a complex film, it's a very funny film, it's a sad film in many ways, and Winslet manages to encompass all of those elements in a character which on paper sounds ridiculous, but in her hands, and also because she wanted to use a great deal of improvisation in order to get across the idea of this very, very unpredictable personality, that he comes across as a real living human being.
Remember me. Try your best. Maybe we can.
Eternal Sunshine and Spotless Mind leads to another Oscar nomination for Best Actress for Kate Winslet. She's almost becoming like the new Meryl Streep in that it was almost obliged to give her a nomination, but she wasn't winning. And she's so sort of interesting in Eternal Sunshine, and she's so good at sort of cutting through the eccentricity of the film and getting to the place the film needs to be, that it's one of those really important performances where it's not just about character, it's about what you contribute to the film as a whole.
Okay.
So sorry, my boy's bothering you.
We're not bothering him, Mum.
Michael, darling, come out from under there.
I can't, I'm in prison.
Oh, I see.
Jay and Barry, pleased to meet you.
Jay and Barry, the author. A pleasure. Sylvia Llewellyn-Davies.
You're a writer?
I am.
He's a playwright, Jack. Quite a famous one at that.
Finding Neverland is the story of J.M. Barrie and how he came to write Peter Pan. It stars Johnny Depp as Barrie in one of his most eccentric roles. Kate Winslet plays basically Wendy in this, the character on whom Wendy is based in Peter Pan. And she manages somehow to ground the movie, which was very much in danger of sort of floating off into some kind of surreal stratosphere, thanks to Depp's rather bizarre performance. She is the one who actually anchors the film in any kind of reality. She brings a kind of maternal instinct to this that is absolutely right, because of course it is that maternal instinct that nourishes the whole idea behind Peter Pan.
She never falls into the sentimental, she never gives the impression that she's attracted to this man. She has a certain charm and patience, and the way that she really holds the believability of the film together, because it's quite a preposterous notion. It's not really what happened. That's not really how he got inspiration for Peter Pan. But eventually, of course, J.M. Barrie receives inspiration for Peter Pan from these boys, and it's particularly from Freddie Highmore's Peter. And it is Kate Winslet's job to patiently usher them towards this moment of inspiration without rolling her eyes.
There is a sweetness and an unusualness to the film in that there's no romance between Barrie and this widow. There's no sense that it might be. It's a platonic relationship, yet a vital one. And I think that's what gives the film its life, is you hadn't seen that kind of thing on the screen before. I find it a little deliberate. I find that those stories about what inspired a great thing to be written are almost sort of writing things and underlining, look, the boys, they wanted to stay young forever. And it's sort of a bit like, yes, that's quite obvious to us. He wrote Peter Pan. But it invokes the era very nicely, and it shows you what Kate Winslet can do, is that she makes things authentic when she turns up in them and she grounds them.
That's a man, I said to myself. A real man. Someone to take me down the pub for a pint. You're way too old for me, but I figure you only go around once in life. I got, 75 years? Don't get hit by a bus. I want to kiss you, big man.
Romance and Cigarettes is just one of those kind of great exuberant bursts where Kate Winslet goes, I am just going to do this because it's everything I shouldn't be doing. It's just great. It's John Turturro, who has a I think he worked with the Coen brothers enough to sort of catch something of their drift, and he has a slightly kind of left field approach to things when he comes to directing. And this is a love triangle set in Queens, with all the life and brashness and, shall we say, salty language that can come with that. It's James Gandolfini, who's this kind of iron worker, an ordinary kind of working class guy who's married to Susan Sarandon and is having a quite entertaining affair with Kate Winslet. But the trick of the film is that this kind of emotional turmoil that kind of, comes on when Susan Sarandon discovers a poem he's about to give to his mistress, is that it's a musical, or a kind of musical.
Under here, you just take my breath away. Under here, the water flows over my head.
It's a very, very touching and genuine romance, which then towards the end, he terminates. Now, along the way, there have been these various songs, and when he says goodbye to Kate Winslet, you can watch her just collapse on herself. She's initially angry, and she laughs at him, but in the end, she's got no real place to go. They are standing by a lake, and because she has no alternative, she's used up every emotion, there's nothing left, she falls into the lake. And what then happens is she sings this song under the water, just floating around the water, singing, but heartbroken singing, half to camera, half swimming around. It's a strange scene, but it's beautiful. It's really hard to explain why it works so well. It's a great way of conveying the absolute desolation of her emotion, is she hurls herself into the lake and sings this broken-hearted love song. It's a really strong moment in a really strong film.
The old ones had to make room for the new ones.
I'm not sure you understand.
We couldn't keep everyone. There wasn't
No.
room.
But what I'm saying, let me rephrase. To make room, you were picking women out and saying you and you and you have to be sent back to be killed.
Well, what would you have done?
The Reader, for me, is certainly one of the most significant films in Kate Winslet's career, certainly one of her most interesting. And I know it's a controversial film, that people look at it and don't see it as working, see it as stretching, see it as one of those films that does the Holocaust for its own sake. And I don't agree. It's based on the Bernard Schlink novel and directed by Stephen Daldry. And another film told on multiple timelines. And in the contemporary timeline, you have Ralph Fiennes, who is attending, he's a lawyer, a law student, who is attending a war crime trial of Kate Winslet's character. So we are informed straight away that who she is, a reality of her. But this experience that he does, going to this court and watching her, draws him back to a memory of being a boy, well, being a young teenager, who meets the younger Kate Winslet.
Before the trial, I never thought about the past. I never had to.
Now, what do you feel now?
It doesn't matter what I feel. It doesn't matter what I think. The dead are still dead.
It's a very, very difficult role for any actress, and Winslet was understandably nervous before taking it on, because it doesn't really show this woman in any sympathetic light, but what it does do is to actually help you understand why she decides to do what she does at the end, which is actually take on all the responsibility of the actions of many others, because she has no other alternative. It's a moral dilemma in a film that is serious in intent, played seriously, and she does, again, an incredible job, not just of impersonating someone. I mean, she's not an impersonator, this is a real character, but someone who is denying an element of themselves because of shame. And the shame is not what you think it is. Very subtle, very clever performance.
The only reason you might see her as a good person is because it's Kate Winslet, and Kate Winslet has this radiance to her at times. But it's quite a cold, dark film about guilt and betrayal and silence. And as a result, Kate Winslet is barely speaking through the film. She's very contained, very closed off. And so, of course, at this point in her career, after all of her expressive, dramatic, moving, romantic, intense roles, it's the reader that she earns her Oscar for Best Actor for. The film in which she does almost nothing.
We haven't advertised the voice software. We could pull it out as a demo and no one would be disappointed. Do you want to try being reasonable? Just, see what it feels like?
Steve Jobs is Danny Boyle's direction of Aaron Sorkin's biography of the great Apple genius Steve Jobs, the great flamboyant marketeer behind the Apple brand. And it's one of those kind of classic Aaron Sorkin kind of highly thought out, highly structured films. It's almost like a backstage drama told in 3 presentations that Jobs is about to make. So 3 different parts of his life. He's going to do that thing he was famous for doing, walk on stage and announce a new product. But what the film is about is all the things that are going on backstage that will tell us about his life.
You wait long enough,
What's
and...
more, 32% of the sales are going to go to people buying a computer for the first time. And 12% are going to people using some kind of Windows machine. That's what Bill Gates has against you.
Michael Fassbender plays Jobs, and Kate Winslet plays Joanna Hoffman, who is his marketing and PR advisor. Actually, she's a lot more than that, because she stays with him all the way through this whole period. By his side, she is his sort of right-hand person. This is a very interesting combination, actually, because they have what might be called a sort of professional husband and wife relationship without any kind of sex involved. I mean, he trusts her implicitly. In fact, she is about the only person he does trust. She acts all the way through as almost like his Jiminy Cricket. It's his conscience. She tries to keep him on the straight and narrow when he's likely to go off, because he's very aggressive, he challenges a lot of people, he annoys a lot of people, and she is the one who sort of calms him down, brings him back to earth, and keeps him focused.
There's wonderful lines and this wonderful accent, this very, very carefully rehearsed and very well prepared sort of Middle European accent with which she has some great jokes. But also at the end, she's the person who tears him apart, really. And she says, Steve, I love you, but you are a terrible human being. And explains to him why and shows him this. If you have to do this now, you have to make it right with your daughter. If you don't, I'm leaving this company and you can contact me at wherever the hell I want to work because I'm so great. And it's this lovely role. She is initially in the film, she's trying to get things done, but by the end, she's reached this point where she just cannot bear him and she breaks him and forces him to change. It's such a good role for her. She gets, she really manages to steal every single scene that she's in.
Okay, just stay cool. You heal all wounds, but they don't talk about how you destroy all that's good in the world, how you turn beauty into ash. Well, you're nothing more than petrified wood to me. You're a dead tissue that won't decompose. You're nothing.
That doesn't prove anything. We can't use that, right?
No, I mean, kids write letters to Santa Claus. It doesn't mean they're crazy.
No, this is therapeutic. It's so sad.
Collateral Beauty is a very strange film with Will Smith as a dad who also runs a company that is about to collapse because his son died 3 years ago and he can't come to terms with it. So he spends all day in his office doing nothing. The company is rapidly losing business and he's just writing these letters to the fates, to death, to love, to life, and complaining about everything. And Kate Winslet is one of his 3 business partners who is dealing with the fact that this guy is wrecking their company and refuses to resign or hand over control of the company. So they conspire to have people impersonate these life, death, love, and meet him and try to talk to him, which they're going to try to video and then use that video to show that he's mad. So it's not a sympathetic role for Kate Winslet in one sense, but what she does is deliver her own character's pain, what her character's lost, which is she has given everything to this company, and she's even given up her own desire to have a child. So she sees this thing now, the thing that she sacrificed her own chance of that happiness for, this company, collapsing by this man who refuses to acknowledge his sorrow. So she's desperate. She's the least cynical of the three partners, and she's the one that is the most believable for that.
Time doesn't go from January to December or from noon to midnight. You know, we all just make it that way in our heads.
That's absurd. Try telling that to a person who's an hour late to a wedding or was just sentenced to 20 years in jail.
Or someone fighting a baby clock.
We really don't need to have this conversation ever.
Winslet herself is the one who represents time, because she feels, her character feels at this stage that she's wasted her life, that she's running out of time. She's running out of time to have children, she's running out of time to have this. And so she spends most of the time sort of moping around, wondering what she's going to achieve before her time runs out. It's a sort of silly film. It might have been better had it had a better script. And I do see the attraction in it, because these kind of wish fulfillment fantasy films can be very engaging, but it needed a bit of a kick to make it, and to have any more impact than it does.
This you call victory? Hiding among strangers. It seems Ewa has turned her back on you. Chosen one.
Avatar: The Way of Water is obviously James Cameron's huge sequel to his vastly successful Avatar. This was a reunion with Kate Winslet. All the years after Titanic and all her struggles, here she was back with James Cameron and back in the water again. Because the thing with Avatar: The Way of Water is most of it is set in the oceans of Pandora. A lot of it's set beneath the surface of Pandora, where the central family have come to live with a coastal tribe, hiding out from the human invaders. And it's about the experiences of this family, especially the youngsters in the family, of the underwater world and all that Cameron shows you. An extraordinary range of CGI and texture. I mean, in many ways visionary. And it asked of its actors not only motion capture, performance capture, this kind of acting a part and it will be translated into another part covered in dots. But this time, because James Cameron is pushing the technology, is they were doing motion capture within the water. So you've got these giant tanks in which they would perform and do these kind of underwater scenes. And Kate Winslet, because she's Ronal and she's like the wife of the chieftain of this coastal tribe, is naturally a water person, a water Na'vi.
She waited many breeding cycles to have this calf. The clan was so happy for her. What is this? Don't worry.
She has this moment where she has to decide whether to let in the fleeing Na'vi, and knowing that if she does so, that the humans, who are now led by a fanatical, I want to wipe out the Na'vi guy, she has to work out whether she's going to let them in and then put her own world at risk. And to be honest, these are the things that James Cameron's quite often exploring in his films, is what decisions do we make? Which is the correct moral decision? Which causes the least harm? And Kate Winslet's very strong in this. There has been some criticism of her accent, because all of the other actors were Indigenous actors and she was the one who was applying an accent. But I think her performance justifies her presence in the film. She has this very powerful facial gestures that are captured. The thing with the James Cameron films is that the whole film is acted out. I mean, the actors get into a tank with all the little bits on them, so every facial expression that the animated Na'vi creatures do are, of course, just mimicking the facial expressions of the actors themselves. The key thing about Winslet's performances, for all of the breath holding and all of this, is that she brings this humanity always to these films. You know, she brings the humanity to Avatar, where you can't even see her face. It's completely covered up by the CGI animation, and anyway, she's delivering it underwater, holding her breath. and yet she can act the socks off most actors, you know, in these situations. She can walk into the most preposterous of places and give this humanity and engagement to any role, really.
Clearly she had acting in her blood. Clearly she had a performing gene inside her. She is very, very good at accents. She is physically able to stretch herself, and yet at the same time she seems to always be real. There's a reality about her. She's grounded. I think she's the most grounded actress that I can think of right now working. But what makes her different and what places her above all of her contemporaries, and there's no doubt in my mind that she is the greatest actress to come out of Britain in the last 30 years, is that she has a total lack of vanity. And that is what takes her from being a level of a great actress into a unique one.
Whenever Kate Winslet walks onto screen, and now later in her career she's actually putting the productions together with things like Mayor of Easttown. You know, she wants to get control of it, partly I think because she knows how she wants everything to be done. You can see the power and the belief in the story in her, and when she walks onto the screen, when she gets involved in a production or a project, you know, when she's there, you're going to be okay. Whatever's happened in the 10 minutes beforehand, if you're about to leave the cinema, wait for Kate Winslet, because then it's probably going to be all right.
She's also got another project playing Lee Miller, the famous American photographer, which shows you again that she's interested in exploring real figures and real cultural moments. She never lacks for courage, you can say that about Kate Winslet. And I think is underrated. I think we rather perceive of her as one thing, this kind of British actress who's done rather well. But actually, she's not that at all. She's had an extraordinary career and just does things all the time that reinvent herself and reinvent our view of her. And if you think, you know, she's the Reading girl who sort of got lucky, well, the career has been nothing about luck. It's all about talent and judgment and crafting, you know, an excellent presence on the screen that we can enjoy.
Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove.